Okay, looks like everything is set up for the streaming, and there we go. Stream settings looks good. Excellent connection, it says. So awesome. I'm just organizing a couple things. I see that two folks have already popped up on channel for one of my random live streams. So good morning and welcome to a random live stream. My name is Rich Charpentier. I'm the channel host, and we do a lot of drone talk here, photography talk. We're expanding this year, going beyond just drones. I'm starting to do some more of our photography editing and other things that we'll be talking through here. And the whole interest of this channel is to have a conversation with other drone operators who are building their drone businesses and share what I know, and they can share back as well. So we hear from a lot of folks on channel, so I really appreciate that. And I appreciate folks popping in here this morning on a Saturday. Good morning, Bruce. Welcome back. Good to see you here. So, boy, there's been a lot going on this week, and we'll talk about the editing here momentarily. But I got to say, January 2021, it's an odd start, isn't it? So, last week, a lot of stuff going on, and we're getting ready to move. So we did find a new rental in the area. And that's going to be great. So sometime next week, we're going to be signing a lease. And so that stress is gone. The second stress of a $9,000 auto repair bill, that stress is gone too. We found someone to do the work for a lot less. Let me look over. I'm not sure how, Bruce, I'm not sure how you get the notification before a live stream. I think the notification does pop up on channel that it's coming up, but I don't know that they give you a ringer bell or not. You know, I follow a couple folks on YouTube as well, and I don't always get the notifications. It's a little weird and it's a little odd sometimes with YouTube. I know that you can become a subscriber, and then they've got the little bell, and I think sometimes the little bell's supposed to notify you, but I've seen a lot of other folks who've had folks not notified. So I'll look into that too this week when things are a little calmer. On top of, so we've got the moving thing, we've got the rental thing. We had to deal with the Nissan Titan, and it is all nice and patched up, and we'll have some more time out of it, I believe. And then on Wednesday, I got the call from family that my father had a heart attack. So this has been a week. And he's doing much better now. So there we go. So a lot of stuff this week, a lot of distractions, not getting to do some of the work that I wanted to do. But next week, we're going to be more distraction free, and we can start moving forward into 2021. And boy, I hope it's going to be a better year. So, all right. We're looking at Lightroom here. So I just, occasionally I'm just going to do some live streams where I'm editing things and checking things out. And, talking more about this year, we're going to do a push for some more real estate. So I hadn't really pushed into it last year. We've had a couple contacts. We've done some real estate work, do a lot more raw land work than that. And the construction work we do, the construction progression work, of course. But I do want to start reaching out into other areas. And I know in this area, the real estate market is saturated. But, what the heck? We're going to still take a swipe at it and see what comes up. So this one was done a couple years ago. This was just me doing some testing for fun back in 2019. This is the house that we were renting that we'll be leaving here shortly. And so this is actually not a full-on Twilight. So there is definitely some dishonesty here, but it does look more like the property. And I won't call it dishonesty. We all edit. But we did some more warm lights in here. We did a couple of layers. And so this was the final version that got punched up just a little bit more in Photoshop. But what was done with it in Lightroom was good too. And the whole reason I'm doing this one, we're going to take a look at some shots that I got this week while I was doing some battery testing, while I was doing some brainless stuff this week with all the turmoil going on. So we'll take a look at those shortly. But I just wanted to show you this one. So I just arrowed over in Lightroom to the next version. So you can see minor differences. The final version is a little brighter, a little more warm light in it, and let's just take a look at the two of them next to each other so that you can see the difference. Also, a bit of a crop, so I cropped this 1920 by 1080. And so here is what we did in Lightroom, and quite honestly, looking at the Lightroom version here, this is still a passable one for close to a twilight shot, and I didn't need to do that extra in Photoshop for that extra warm light. I think we could have done some more of that warm light in here. So Lightroom got me 90% of the way there. That's one of the reasons why I like Lightroom so much. And we're gonna take a look. So I made a copy and a second copy. Oh, let's see. Oh, I've got the two highlighted. My apologies. There we go. So I made a second copy this morning, so I'm not blowing anything up. But I just wanted to, oh, let's see. Hello from the Ukraine. Good morning. Well, actually, afternoon to you. It's morning here in Prescott, Arizona. Thanks for popping in for a few. So on this particular image, I was doing bracketed shots just in case. And, you know, I just want to do a couple of nice shots of the property to show folks back in New England. So this was a for fun and for practice, and I'm regularly practicing my shooting techniques with the drone and with my ground-based cameras. When you've got that extra time, if you don't have a client, it doesn't hurt to even shoot around your own place or other favorite properties. So anyways, this particular image, I'm going to go into the develop module, and we're going to take this back in just a moment. But there was a good amount of brightening and also a good amount of warming the areas in here because we were closer to sunset. You can see the sun's coming in off of my camera right and hitting this tree right here and actually not lighting up the pampas grass anymore. And it also wasn't lighting up the pampas grass over on the left-hand side. So if you take a look over on the right-hand side, we can see our histogram here. But since I'm in the develop mode, you'll notice I had dropped the highlights. I dropped them by 100%. And I actually pumped up the shadows a little bit, dropped the whites down, dropped the blacks down a bit. A little bit of clarity and dehaze, a little punch of vibrance. But one of the biggest parts of this, I'm going up to the brush tool here, and we're going to kick the brush tool on for a moment. And you're going to see a couple of things. You're going to see several brush items. And if you have any questions, by the way, I am looking over to the other screen occasionally to see questions and comments. So when you see me looking off camera, that's what I'm doing. I'm just making sure I'm not missing anyone's questions or comments because I will answer questions over on that side. So you can see, number one, when I turn that brush off, I did some initial changes already just in the camera raw editor basically. I dropped the highlights, I increased the shadows, I dropped the whites, I dropped the blacks a little bit. We punched it up a bit as well. So that was just the global changes on this. And behind those global changes, we just used the brush tool for multiple brushes. So if I select this one up here, it shows I painted this whole front of the house. And let's take a look at what I did, pointing at that one. So I pushed the temperature up just slightly warmer. I pushed the exposure up in that brushed area. Taking a look down, I put the highlights up just a little bit in the patio area to bring up some more of the light, some more of the detail in there. And in the brush, because I dropped everything down universally, I could have done all brush work, but I dropped everything universally. And so the brush, I put some of the highlights back in there. I put some of the whites back in there. And I also pushed the clarity up a little bit more to get more of that texture and feel. So that's one single brush. This is one of the reasons why I'm such a Lightroom fanboy. Doesn't mean you have to get it. You can do this in Photoshop, in Affinity Photo, and many other applications. So doing layers and brushes, no big deal. But I like how quickly I'm able to achieve some of these results in just Lightroom alone. So let's go take a look at that second brush area. What's going on there? This is where I brushed up the exposure a little bit more for the windows and also warmed it a little bit more to give more of that feel that we're coming into the evening time and the lights coming out of those windows. In reality, it was a little darker and dimmer than that. I did one more on the window, so I made some additional changes with that paintbrush as well. So I painted several things, and we're in copy number 2. So what I'm going to do, you're seeing what it looks like now. Let's hit the reset button really quick. There's the actual shot. So this is one of the bracketed shots. And take a look at that. The sky has been devastated. There's nothing going on in the sky. And suddenly, this is a really flat image. And so, like I said, this image came from several of the brackets that I was doing. And so look at the difference there. And with those quick changes, and it took less than 10 minutes to make those changes. But let's go back to that virtual copy of it again. Look at the difference between those two. I'm just going to hit reset again. We'll hit the G key because these two images were the same. So I'm just grabbing the two images, going down to the XY so that we can see the before and after. So just by dropping the highlights in that initial pass, we got some of the color and tone back out of the sky there. So no worries about a sky replacement or anything. Just taking a look back over again, making sure I'm not missing anybody's comments or questions. So there's that flat DNG. There's what didn't happen. You can see not a lot of bright light coming out of those windows, no warm light, no feeling that we're actually lighting up the patio area. And for those of you who want to know about the Boston Red Sox flag, that would be Jody. She's a big Red Sox fan. And then the weird white panel across the window here. These are north-facing windows. And during the summertime, the sun is shining right in on them. And all of the birds in the neighborhood only see reflection in those windows. So I'd be back here in the studio, minding my own business, doing some work, and suddenly I'd hear thump. Really big, really loud thump because a dove just hit the window. Or another smaller bird just hit the window. Or a hawk or a falcon came blowing right into the patio area. So we had to start putting things up into our windows to discourage the birds from killing themselves on the windows. When we first moved here, we had several bird tragedies. So sorry to all of those birds. But so I actually even brushed out the Red Sox flag on this side for the final edit because people aren't looking right into those windows. And given the size of the images that are usually displayed on real estate sites, they're not going to see that little bit of brushwork. Oh, I am absolutely. So John just asked a question. I'm just not big on editing on my tablets and things. So that's why I'm still sticking with Lightroom Classic. I do have Lightroom CC. And, you know, for me, I like a bigger screen where I'm working on. So I know a lot of the people are doing the Lightroom mobile and things, but for me, you know, I've been doing Lightroom Classic since the original Lightroom. And so I'll give you another side story here on Lightroom. I actually wasn't interested in Lightroom when it first came out. A friend of mine sent me a licensed copy of Lightroom as a present and suggested that I give it a try. She knew, you know, all the photography work that I was doing while I was traveling with my Airstream, and she thought it would speed up my workflow, and I had my own folder system going on. And I did a Scott Kelby photo walk years ago. So I was the leader for a couple of photo walks here in Prescott years ago. And I got a free book on Lightroom, Lightroom workflow from Kelby Training. And so one day when I was doing laundry, I decided to break out that Kelby Training book that I'd gotten for free. And I got 2 chapters into it, and I felt like a complete and total idiot for not having looked at the book before and not taken that license that my friend got for me, because the time savings compared to how I was managing all my images. This thing, you know, after I got through the book in like 2 days, I realized that I'd wasted hours, days, and potentially weeks of my time with the way I was managing and editing my images. And when I read that book and I went through that book, 2007, 2008, somewhere in there, I felt pretty silly that I was so resistant to change. So, and I'm willing to leave Lightroom for something better as well, that, you know, if there's something out there that will help improve my workflow even more, I'm willing to use it. So, all right, so there's that quick story. But so the bulk of the editing for this, like I said, was done in Lightroom with some final retouches in Photoshop. Didn't have to do it, really didn't have to do it. The twilight photo was looking pretty good, and I could have done a little more adjustment. That final bit of work that I did in there with the TIFF file, let's take a look. Basically, we punched up a little more warmth in here to make it feel like really warm lights coming out. And the honest truth of this house is the lighting in that kitchen dining room area is super warm. The bulbs and also what goes over the bulbs cast a lot of orange and yellows throughout the day. So the reality is something closer to this. And let's just scroll down to take a look at one more. So I took one more of my bracketed shots and just did some painting in there to test as well. So once again, in that develop module, let's just take a quick look in here. I'm gonna, number one, let's look over. Yep, universally, I dropped those highlights again. I dropped the whites, the blacks a little bit as well, and some clarity and some dehaze, of course, and then, of course, a little bit of brushwork. So I only did 1, 2, 3 brushes in here. And let's click on that brush on the window to see. Pumped up the exposure a little bit, pumped up the clarity a little bit, and slightly warmed it. I just did +9 there. So you can very quickly take something that's not great. Let's turn those paintbrush buttons off and let's hit reset just to see. Oh, pretty flat and washed out. So this is what came out of the DJI Mavic 2 Pro camera. So, you know, we're closing in on sunset. We've got a lot of shadows. We've got some overcast off in the distance, muting all of this as well. And, you know, let's go back to this again. So just with those brushes, we've made a nice twilight photo. Now, I'm looking over on this screen again. So I've got a Samsung over here. I can't adjust the brightness very well on it. So it looks a little more washed out. So I don't know what type of monitor you're using, but I'm hoping that you're seeing what I'm seeing on screen. I also know that when I look over at OBS, it's not as pretty on screen, the screencasting software. So if it's a little flatter, believe me, very nice and warm tones. We brushed in a little more brightness in that patio area, and then we left the other things in the background alone. Now I'm going to switch over. I'm going to switch out of this Lightroom library, and we're going to go to last year's Lightroom library, 2020, and we're going to take a look at another image. And all of this is focused around the same house in celebration of our upcoming move, I suppose. So this is a good house to test with, that's for sure. It's also an interesting neighborhood, and it gives you a lot of things to practice with. So we've done some 360 walkthrough stuff in this area too. So it's a great place to practice on because, you know, you've got this dense neighborhood, you've got some interesting items around the neighborhood, and now we're just waiting for Lightroom to come back up. Yep. So that was close to twilight. Last year I just did a couple of doing some bracketed shots just to do some additional practicing for real estate work. Now during the summertime, this porch area is lit up better because of where the sun is in the sky. And so we got some nice colors right out of the DJI Mavic 2 Pro. But I think I did a little development on this one. So let's go in and take a look. And yeah, I didn't do too much. We didn't change the exposure or anything. We punched up the clarity and the dehaze, and maybe it's a little oversaturated to me. But let's compare it to what it was. Okay, so there's what came exactly out of the Mavic 2 Pro. Pretty nice. It's an all right standalone photo. But what I had been doing, I was actually doing a lot of bracketing and, you know, just to see if we could do some layering on these to get a little more out of them. And so I'm just going to go take a look in here. So this is a final version, and I ran it through Aurora HDR for some practice. So I do own Luminar. I made some comments the other week about Luminar that I'm not thrilled with some of their newest stuff. But MacFun and now Skylum, when they came out with Aurora HDR, I was probably one of the first people in line to buy it. So I really do like Aurora. You can do some interesting things with it. And so that's still right down on my toolbar, Aurora HDR 2019. I still have Luminar 3 as well. But so this one is probably punched up a little too much, maybe a little over the top for a real estate shot. But what I want to do, let's come over to this one. So we've got, you know, 5 brackets in here. And so we could do an HDR for sure, but I'm going to open up that stack and let's take a look at those 5 brackets real quick. Okay, so a little darker, so there's an underexposure, and a little brighter, so there's one of the overexposures. and another underexposure. So we could send this off to a to an HDR software package like Photomatix Pro, which I also own, or we could also blend these right here in Lightroom. For shots like this, I'm doing the brackets more just for my safety. If I come back and I'm looking to edit an individual shot and maybe it was a little too blown out, getting those brackets in there means that, you know, I can take a little more underexposure and work with that. But I'm just going to jump into the develop module really quick, and we're going to be a little sloppy with this. We're just going to do some quick things to see how fast we can clean these things up. So number one, I'm going to drop the highlights. We've got a lot of light in here. The histogram is saying, yeah, we're heading over to the overexposed side just a little bit. So once again, I just dropped the highlights real quick, and I'm satisfied with that. We could bring the blacks up a little bit for inside of that porch patio area, and maybe we'd brush a little more light in there. But the reality, I do like to show the reality of these properties. And the reality of this property is that while it gets sun in the front all day long, that particular patio area always has some nice shade. So that's the truth of the building. And you know, if you're sitting outside on a hot July day in Arizona, it's nice to have that shade. So in here, maybe we'd push the clarity up a little, and maybe we'll go for that dehaze just a bit as well. So we've actually gotten, you know, some more of the blues in the background here. So we're building a nicer sky. And, you know, with all the software out there now, we could totally do the sky replacement if we wanted to as well. Now, overall, this is what the house looks like. It's this tan/orange blend going on here. So it is a very realistic representation of the property. This is not the shot that I would go with. This was just one of the shots that we took while I was establishing what I'd really like to show about the house. So, you know, keep in mind, you're going to have throwaway photos. Every professional does. Hey, from Alberta, Canada. Welcome. Good morning, and thanks for stopping in. So we're just talking through some images here today. I felt like doing a live stream today after such a weird week here. And so I thought we'd go in because I did some shots and I did some drone work this week while I was, you know, biding my time, waiting on truck issues, waiting on rental issues, and then finding out that a family member had a heart attack. Like I said before, if you just tuned in, he's doing great. So he's all set. But so I just did some shooting around the place and a little bit of practice. We're in the middle of winter here. So what I'm going to be showing you next are some pretty bad photos and some challenges for if you're going to start doing some of the real estate work on how you can get something better in front of the realtors, your clients. All right. So we could spend some time brushing in here, but like I said, you know, does this feel realistic? Yes, it does. The mountains in the distance have lots of browns and greens. They've got scrub out there, and then they've got dirt. This is a desert state. What you're looking at in front of this home here. So this is outside of the home area, goes down to a wash area. So there's some greens, but oftentimes, especially in dry years like the one that we've had this year, there's a lot of brown everywhere. It's the truth of the location. So you can only work around your images so much before, you know, you're not telling an accurate story. Since we've been house hunting for the past month, we have looked at a lot of Zillow properties, things on MLS, and I'll tell you what, we walked into the homes and we had the images pulled up from the listings, and wow, the homes look way better in photo than they do in person. So definitely some heavy editing on the photographer's part. But so like I was saying in here, we could brush things down more if we wanted to. We've always got hyper blue skies here in Arizona. That is the truth of Arizona. When I first moved here, I thought I could never get sick of a lot of sunlight. And after being here for like 5 or 6 months, I was like, bring on the clouds. And fortunately, monsoon season hit pretty quickly after and brought on the clouds. So that was great. All right, so I'm going to pop back out of that one. And like I said, or actually, let's not. Let's go back into the develop module, and we're just going to reset this, okay? And since we've got 5 brackets, let's go ahead and use those really quick and see what this looks like. One of the things that I have always said to people, I think Lightroom's HDR photo merge is one of the least abusive HDRs out there. I do like a lot of the results. They're very tame results. And then they leave you with the opportunity to do a little more editing and cleanup afterward. So let's go ahead and take those 5 brackets, and we're gonna have Lightroom do this. And all right, good morning from Apache Junction. Wow. So Kelly, I've got a lot of clients down in that area. I was actually on the phone with a client down in Mesa yesterday, who runs an RV park. And so we were just talking about, some of the upcoming things this year for work we're going to be doing with them. But yeah, I do get down to that area usually during the winters. This year we've avoided travel to southern Arizona because of, the problem that shall not be named. So, all right, we're going to hit the merge. As you see, this is a little punchier than the original image. So we're just waiting for that HDR mode to come up. And up in the upper left corner, you'll see you're creating HDR. So we've got our 5 images. So there we go. It's done. So I also stack things. Whenever I do bracketing, I do auto stacking. So when you come back from a shoot, let's say you're doing a bunch of brackets. So you're doing some HDR work inside or outside, and maybe you're taking 3 exposures, maybe you're taking 5 exposures. They're all back to back, right? So you've probably set up a manual function on your camera. You did a manual settings, then you actually saved it as a custom function for yourself. I actually have custom functions on my 5D Mark II and my 7D, and I love custom functions because when I get into familiar scenarios, I can jump right into them really quick. So the same thing on the drone, we can set up those brackets, and they're gonna fire off really fast. They're gonna be bang, 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 especially if you're doing outdoor stuff. Well, when you do that, it's really easy to come into Lightroom, highlight a bunch of your images. So let's just pretend I'm highlighting them. And we can actually do photo, and we can do stacking. And one of the things we can do is auto stack by capture time. So when I import everything, when I import all my DNGs, I highlight everything that I imported for my shoot that day. I come over to auto stack by capture time, and Lightroom automatically puts these all into stacks for me because it says, oh yeah, these were all shot really fast together. And then Rich waited 2 or 3 minutes for his next shot. Super convenient. And so this is one of those features that just really speeds up your workflow. And when you get into a real groove, whether you're shooting weddings or real estate or, doing outdoor adventures, when you're shooting those bracketed shots, Lightroom gives you a really great tool in that stack by capture time. So what I want to do is I'm grabbing image number 1 of 5, and I'm grabbing that HDR that we just did in Lightroom, and I'm just going to do a comparison. So as we can see here, so Lightroom, in a very simple, quick manner, definitely punched up some of the colors for us here, saturated those trees just a little bit more. We've got more saturation in the sky, and we can see that maybe the highlights were dropped right in here by Lightroom as well. So not a bad job. I think that I would actually tone this one down just a little bit, because our greens aren't quite this punchy green. So, during the summertime where the sun is hitting, of course, we're going to have some nice light in the treetops, and especially toward twilight. But this did a pretty nice job for me just with that merge. Now, if I go into Aurora HDR or Photomatics, of course, I can fine tune those things as well. But if you're going for a quicker workflow, you can go in and do a little more post-processing on that HDR version that Lightroom just gave me. And like I said, it's a little too punchy for my tastes as far as the reality of this place. I look at it and I live in it every day. So yeah, a little over the top. Let's go into that develop module. So what happens, it's not really a blended HDR like if you're using Photomatics or Aurora, for instance. It's actually, Lightroom is actually taking a look at all the brackets that you have. And so what it does is it actually goes in and manipulates all of our develop module tools anyway. So Lightroom made a decision when it pulled everything together that we're going to do an exposure of negative 0.29. We're punching up the contrast a little bit. they've dropped the highlights massively like I did in that single image before. So as you're going through all this, you could have just achieved this with Lightroom, so you didn't have to do that merge. And you could have made this result just by using brushes in Lightroom and using its overall global settings in Lightroom. So if we were to reset this but copy all of these settings and then repaste those settings, we're going to reintroduce that. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going down on the left-hand side of Lightroom. I'm looking at this image, HDR DNG. I'm going to hit copy on it, and I'm copying everything like a maniac. Okay, I'm going to hit this copy button. There we go. I have now copied that. So hopefully we're going to do good, because I'm going over to the right-hand side now of this HDR DNG, and I'm hitting reset. Oh, what does that look like? I think that looks like image number 1. So I'm just hitting the G key here real quick, and I'm selecting that first image of 5, and let's compare them. Do you see any differences? I don't see any differences. That's because, so Lightroom made its settings based on those 5 brackets that we showed it. We said, here's the brackets, Lightroom, what would you do with it? And so all of this happened in their develop module. It wasn't really an HDR merge. There was a develop module simulate something like that HDR merge. So that's what I wanted to show you there. And let's go ahead and hit the tab key again. Oh, and if I go too fast on the keys at any time, please let me know. I do have another video package other than OBS where when I click on things, it shows a little splash. And so if you'd like to see that on screen when I'm doing these, just let me know in the comments or in the chat, and we can definitely accommodate that. So whoops. So our HDR DNG, there it is right there, and labeled HDR DNG, but it's not really. So Lightroom gave it a label and did some things in the develop module. So just to prove this out, I'm going to go back to that first one. I'm going to make sure develop module that first one's got nothing going on. So I just hit the reset. And now that we're looking at it, I'm going to go down to paste. Whoa, look at that. It pasted those settings that Lightroom has suggested as a quasi HDR. So I'm going to hit reset on that. We're going to hit the G key, and we're going to go back down. So that was 1 of 5. So we're going back down. There I go. HDR DNG that we completely reset. So we blew the changes out of the water. And all I have to do now is hit that paste button, and there's the HDR-like image. So I don't know if you knew about this or how Lightroom's HDR works, so I hope you find that one interesting. I realized it a long time ago. I said it's not really merging anything, but it's extrapolating all of the information from your overexposures and your underexposures, and then it's saying, this is what we would do in the develop module to change this. So I think that's an incredibly powerful tool right there. What I'm going to do now is we're going to get out of this catalog, and we're going to go to what inspired me to do today's live stream anyways. So we're relaunching into the 2021 catalog. So if you haven't noticed, whenever I go up to File, I've got a million catalogs, previous catalogs for different projects, different years. So that's the other thing that I like about the Lightroom's management. And like I said, if somebody else could come up with a management system like Lightroom has for managing tens of thousands of images, I'd be there in a minute. I'm always looking for new tools and better tools. So we're just waiting for Lightroom to come back up here, and it seems to be, there we go. Thought it was getting finicky. So what it was before, you'll understand it could have been worse. So I'm just hitting the G key here. So the other day, I was just shooting around, milling around, you could say. I was running some batteries down. I was doing a little battery testing, and I was taking a couple of shots. So this is not a great shot. This was more about me running the battery down. But I wanted to show you through a couple things because like I said before, we're in winter here right now. And so during the summertime, the sun is to the north of the house. So basically the back of the house here is facing south. So it's 12:42 in the afternoon, the worst time of day to be shooting. Landscape photographers will tell you dawn and dusk, but real estate clients, construction clients, you know, if you're doing agricultural work, whatever you're working on as a drone operator, you might have shoots that are not at the best time of day, but they still need to happen. What do we do then? You know, if we've got a realtor and the realtor says that we can come in and do a shoot at 1 o'clock and we're doing interiors and exteriors, and we know that the north side of houses are gonna suck. They're just gonna be awful. And we'll see that again in a minute, how awful they are. Let's go into the develop module here because I think, yeah, I did a little development on this one. And so I'm gonna go down here and just do a copy of all my stuff just in case. And I'm gonna hit reset on this one. So actually there was a little bit of a tilt that we corrected to get everything even. And there was very little that we did with the colors. So I've got the sun behind me. I'm shooting to the north. It's lighting this area up really nicely. These are the real blue skies, no fake skies going on in here. So we had some wispy clouds going on the other day. Fantastic. And, you know, for this particular image, this is not going to be a good one because I don't like the composition. So this isn't something that I would give to a realtor. I would want to do a little bit more work on it before presentation. But just looking at this one, you know, once again, we can definitely drop the highlights. And so, you know, the front of the house is a little washed out. So it is this tan orange blend, more to the tan side, but it's looking way too much to the tan side for the reality of the place. You know, when we push up our dehaze a little bit, we're not going to go crazy with it. By the way, look where the histogram's leaning. So we're way over toward, you know, getting into the overexposed side. No blinkies on it though. Let me just kick that on. Yeah. So it's not complaining about any areas that are completely and totally blown out. So dropping those highlights, no big deal. I really don't want to hit the shadows much or the blacks. We can see the detail in the entryway, and the entryway is usually well shaded throughout the day as well. So once again, we're always aiming for more realistic images. I had a time in my life when I loved over-the-top HDRs, and like I said earlier, after all this house hunting, I'm not a big fan of super crazy HDRs on interiors anymore. I really want the cabinets to look like they are. So going through kitchens was one of the big things as we were looking for the houses, and I was like, well, this cabinet looks black, and this cabinet's standing in front of it kind of tan. Somebody massively underexposed or punched things up too much. So there we go. So we were just looking at the side that was sunlit right now. And by the way, so I used Lightroom to quickly make today's little title cover. So that's one thing that I always do. I'll pick things out from my own images to use those. So I've got a lot of things that I totally flagged as unacceptable, but I can still go in and play with those afterward. But when I got around to the north side of the house, so the sun, we're now shooting into the sun, of course, which is just gonna really screw with your overall exposure. So I mean, look at the histogram here. So we've got things leaning way to the dark side, everything under here. And the sun is not hitting down here. You can see, you know, the sun's coming over and hitting the top of the pampas grass here, but we're not lit in here at all. And so there's a good amount of noise in here, you know, with this underexposure. And if we punch this up, when we go to punch this up, we're going to be adding noise. So when you are bringing up those shadows and when you're bringing up the blacks, you start adding and introducing more noise as you're bringing that exposure up. Fortunately, once again, on these real estate sites, they're usually smaller boxes for the slideshows. People aren't putting this up on a widescreen TV or anything. So that level of pixelation is going to be noticeable to you and me, and we're going to be upset with ourselves about it. But maybe we can still pull something out of this thing that could be usable. So like looking at this, totally not usable. Second thing, I should have been bracketing when I did this the other day. Like I said, my primary thing wasn't for doing a video. I was doing a lot of battery testing. So we've got a couple new batteries. In one of my previous videos, I talked about the fact that my DJI batteries were swelling after only a year of use and, you know, not heavily used. So Got some new batteries in again because the other ones were retired because the amount of swelling going on in them I felt was unsafe for flight. I'm going to arrow over, and so this was just me messing around this morning. Not the greatest edit in the world, so I'm not sitting here saying, hey, I'm Picasso. I'm not. However, we were able to bring this up, and this color right here, this is really what the color of this house is outside. So when you're walking around it during the day, you know, when it's not so darned washed out, that is the truer color. So let's go back and look at what the original was. So really bad here. So what happened? What can we do for this in here? So I'm going to go ahead and play with this one really quick. Number one, sky's blown out. It is super blown out. Hey, Michael, how are you doing? Great conversation yesterday. So I'm glad to talk to you. And thanks for stopping in this morning. Wow, I'm getting a shoulder cramp. Excuse me for that one. I should have hit the mute. This sky is tragic. And it's not what the sky looked like the other day. We had these wispy clouds. We had some amazing blues in there. So I'm dropping the highlights. Just drop those highlights down and look at how we brought that sky back. You can see where the sun is, by the way, up here, because that's your most blown out area in there. But just drawing those highlights back was really good for us. I do want to push, so we've got this foreground, and the foreground's got a lot of shadows. So let's go ahead, and am I being extreme? Maybe we'll go to plus 25. So we're actually getting a little more in those shadowed areas there. I do like to push the clarity up. I do like a little extra texture. That's just me. And this is all your own experimentation. That's one thing that I haven't been saying today. Experiment. There's no right and wrong. I know we've got photography rules and everything, but I'm a guy who walks up to something and says, what does this button do? Experiment with it. If you have time to go get some generic fun shots, go ahead and get those generic fun shots and then do some experimentation. It's not going to hurt anything. So I'm not damaging this image right now in Lightroom. So if I want to dial things back to where they were, I can. So I push the clarity up. Let's go with the dehaze a little bit. Look what happened to the sky with that dehaze. So let's put it back. And just a little, going over the top with dehaze. Let's just do it. Oh my God. No. Dehaze comes back to the beginning. So you get the idea though. So we're getting into fall sky. I can believe this sky. I've lived here for over a decade, so I can believe that we have a sky like this. So it's our foreground that's our biggest problem here, and I don't want to do everything universally in this area. So that's where that paintbrush tool comes in, and it works just like layer masking in Photoshop or in Affinity Photo. Hey, David, how are you doing? What are you doing up this time of day? It's good to see you. So we're having more and more people pop up, and I'm always happy to see folks. So thanks for stopping in. I hope that this has been a fun one. Let's grab the brush. Once again, sometimes these photos, even with the work we do on them, you shouldn't present them. Throw them away. But maybe we can have something happen out of this one. So what I was going for, I liked having the fence here to let people know, hey, we're outside of the yard, because this is a big yard for this community. So it's, some of the other houses have a lot less space to walk around and work in. So I wanted to show, hey, this is a big location. So I'm going to go in and grab the brush, okay? And, we're on the dark side. We're in heavy shade here, but I think I want to push. And this might be too much, but remember with the brush tool, once you start doing things, so I'm just brushing, and you're seeing the exposure come up here. So, and I'm brushing over into here, and it looks like I've got some chromatic aberrations over there, which is really weird. So I'm brushing in the shadowed area as well, okay? And actually, I'm gonna go ahead and make this a little bigger. And I like brightening up that pampas grass because it tells you, hey, there is sun going on. So I'm just brushing in here. And, if I was sloppy, I can easily fix this right afterwards. So let me go point at where the brush was. Check it out. So this is where we've painted, and you can do multiple brushes. That's the other thing. Um, so maybe I'm gonna paint in the neighbors too and brighten theirs up. But I could make multiple brushes if I needed to go through again and again. Or, so there it is, mask right there, so I could hit new and make another brush. But let's go ahead and be obnoxious and extreme again here. Let's push the exposure up in our painted area. And let's also, I'm gonna warm it just a little bit, not too much, because as I said to you before, this is closer to what the house looks like most of the time when it's not completely washed out or when it's not completely in shadow. So we're getting some of that color, but I'm not getting as much of that color over on the side of the building. So the patio, porch area, roof is looking real to me. And, maybe that exposure went a little too far, but I can also add, we could bring the blacks up just a bit more. But once again, I'm sitting here depending on this one button when I could do multiple masks. So let's do another new mask. Let's do new, and let's place that there because maybe we would like to paint in that warmth a little more. So I'm just going to paint through here, and I also had the exposure up. But I'm just painting, and it might be that this one totally doesn't work out, but does it hurt you if you spend 5 minutes to see if you can do a little more with the building? If you come back, usually, especially wedding photography, there are no reshoots. When the wedding's done, the wedding's done. And similar for the realtors, because they don't want you coming in 2 or 3 days to perfect your shots. So you've got to have a couple of tools for you to help you. And by the way, what I'm doing right here is I'm just moving the temperature up a little more, which has really helped here, but clearly I slopped it into here. So I'm just holding the Option key and I'm brushing that away because I already had, this was brushed up good. I'm going to move that brush. Let's see where it is right now. So I wanted to avoid, actually I'm going to go ahead and take that out. So once again, this is not a Picasso or anything, but let's go ahead and close that. And let's just take a look at them next to each other. And I'm waiting for the tab key to come up with me here. All right, so definite differences here. So, Lightroom's slowing down on me. My Macintosh must be raising up the flag here. All right, I'm gonna go back down and there's our develop module again. Let me just hit the G key. So once again though, this is not, the greatest shot in the world. In the end, when I'd worked through this morning, notice how I kept those warmer tones in there, also brushed a little of that back in. Once again, I wouldn't be handing this off to a realtor. I'd want to do a couple other shots, and I wasn't shooting for the sake of this. I was shooting for the sake of the battery testing and playing. But definitely much better. One thing that I'm going to do with this one is go back into the develop module. Hello, develop module. And I'm going to hit copy just so all those settings that I did. And let's look at the brushes that, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. I'm going to hit reset completely on this to show our starting point. So there's what it was. And definitely a lot of improvement. I'm just going to paste in all those changes again. You can see in here, so I blundered in here and need to brighten that a little bit. Same in here, so I probably just didn't brush in well enough there. But you can recover things pretty nicely in Lightroom, Photoshop, Affinity. So always when you're on the locations, make sure you're shooting in RAW, so DNG or whatever your camera RAW file is. I do shoot in JPEGs when I'm making models, when I'm doing 2D and 3D models, because I don't want to introduce giant RAW files to those models. So just before we leave and let you go, the biggest part of me running out the other day was before we leave this house, we're actually going to be shooting the house for the landlords and the realtors. We're going to be doing a 360 virtual tour in this home, and we're going to be doing some standard still imaging as well. So when I first went out to play with the drone the other day to do the testing of the batteries and see how we were doing on the batteries, I did use the DJI Go 4 app. So the Go 4 app has a built-in 360 pano. So a lot of the DJI products have that. So with that in mind, I said, hey, I'm just going to go outside and do the pano. Now you can see the sky is terrible up top because the gimbal can't shoot 90 degrees up. So the gimbal's positioned here so it doesn't go all the way up. But this still does do nicely for an outdoor 360. So normally when people are visiting your tours, they're looking at the home, they're looking at the neighborhood area, and they're not tilting all the way up 90 degrees to go, did Rich get the clouds directly above him correct? So I've been comfortable enough with using these generated panos from the Go 4 app. So you see here, I actually raised the drone up. I figured let's show off the neighborhood to give people a feel. So we'll be using some of these for the final virtual tour for the house. But I'm just going to export all three of these because I just want you to have a good look at them. And I'm going down to full-size panos. So I have some presets in Lightroom for my exports, and also I've got some presets for imports as well. So on this one, we're going to output it at 240. I could, make some other customizations, put my watermark in. We're not going to do any of that. So this is going to go out to a folder on my desktop, full-size panos. So let's export those three. And what I'm doing is I'm actually going to drag them into Affinity so that you can see them in their 360 mode. What comes out of the Go 4 app, in my opinion, is pretty good. So the Mavic 2 Pro does a nice job on the 360s, and sometimes I feel like you could just go with these. So by the way, I'm just moving a folder out of the way. There we go. And let's open up Affinity. Let's go on down here. Oh, it's alphabetized, Rich. I'm just taking a look over again. Oh, for doing cloud storage, David. So, you've got cloud storage available for Adobe. I have Dropbox. I also have Google Drive as well. I've got multiple offline storage solutions for all of my images. I also have a primary drive that's running right now, and that primary drive does get backed up. So every year I have a lot of portable drives going on. I used to run Drobos as well. So I've got a couple of Drobos from early in a lot of my photography work. I'm just moving this out of the way for a second because I see I've missed a couple questions. So yeah, my primary place, like for all of my exchanges with my clients, Dropbox, and I actually use the Dropbox for storage of their stuff as well. So usually client stuff is on one of my portable drives here, and the videos or photos are also located in the Dropbox for clients as well. But yeah, it does get unwieldy, and one of the things is you really do have to clean up your libraries after you're done and you've picked and flagged things. I know it's so hard to delete images sometimes, but if it's a clunker, it's a clunker. Get rid of it, save some drive space because that gets expensive. Let me take a look over again. So Michael was asking about, which app is the best. I've used Litchi and the Go 4 app for doing pianos. I like that the Go 4 app will do that auto stitching for you. So it will save all of the shots as well that go into making the piano up. So if you want to take them all off and use PT GUI afterward, you can. But let's take a look at what that produced for me here. Hey, Clearline, good to see you on here. So yeah, I've got to find a way to get the to get the chat closer to me so that I'm not looking away. And David, I'll tell you about a couple others. I've got to get in touch with you next week, so we'll catch up then. All right, so we've got these three full-size panos. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag these on, and we'll see. Like I said, I'm really impressed, and I've been impressed since I first got the Mavic 2 Pro on the stitching that it does for the 360s right out of the box. So here we are with the first one. So we've got the whole neighborhood view. So let's go in. And if you've seen some of my recent videos, you know that I'm pretty impressed with Affinity Photos Equirectangular. So here we go. This is kind of a nice story for the realtors, because we can do this aerial 360. Then we could do a 360 right down at the entranceway. So we could have people come down from on high. But one of the things is they really get to see and get a feel for their neighborhood in a way that, you know, a standard still photo is not going to tell the same story. And, you know, you can also do that 360 on the other side of the building, so that we get that full feel of what does this property look like. So as we've been doing that house hunt, more and more, I'm coming around to the idea. So 360s were kind of a fun thing for me at first, playing with them, you know, a couple of years ago with the drone. It was for fun. But as the virus that shall not be named has gone on, and more photographers are doing the 360s, there's great reason behind this, and I think great value in the long run for a new technology for people house hunting. We went to a house showing last week where they had people lined up outside. I'm not kidding. So this was one of my frustrations that I didn't say on live stream before. They had us lined up. So there's 5 other couples and then us, and you know, we each went in with our masks and stuff, but and the images from the interior looked nothing like the reality. I walked away really disappointed, and as a consumer, I was a little bothered. So that drilled it into me last week that these 360s have a lot of value. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go back and make sure that that projection is off. All right, so there was remove projection. And we're going to close that particular one and move on to the next one. So here is that's that one. Let's close it. Don't save. And let's go on to the next one. So this one was shot lower. And we're going to go into that layer again, live projection. So I don't know about you, but this is looking pretty good on my screen. And so the Mavic 2 did a great job with this stitching. By the way, let's do the field of view and let's zoom in here. There's the Mavic shadow, so I can edit that out afterward. But overall, this is looking really nice to me. And yes, we have that issue with the sky. So you could take from the sky that you have and mirror it upward if you're really, really concerned about it. But in my experience, I don't see that people are going to be, you know, this is not where they're looking. This is not where they're interested. What they're interested in is actually the presentation of the home and getting a good feel as to whether or not they want to buy that home. So we're going to close that one out. Don't save. And we're going to do one more. So now we're doing one from the north side of the building. The north side of the building was our big problem, right? So too much shadow in there, and we needed to go in and do some pretty big editing. And even then, I still wasn't satisfied, right? So I flew the drone just a little ways away from the property because I wanted to show off what's going on around there. And we can label, you know, we could label the house when we're in Cloud Pano or Kula or Theasis. So we could make some labels in here. But let's go up to that layer and let's just check it out. So this was the first thing I did the other day for my testing when I was testing out the batteries. And as you can see, the sky, we've got some blowout because the sun is in here. You know, that big round ball of fire in the sky. It's annoying sometimes. It gets in the way of what we're doing when we're shooting. But so I could align this when they come in to, let's say, the virtual tour. I could align this so that it's facing right at the house. And I could also have it zoomed in a little more. But what I really like about this, and you know, I should have flown this a little higher, but what I'm really liking is it does give you a great view of what the neighboring area is like, what's around you, what you can expect in that community. So this one I should have shot another one a little higher and, you know, with a little more down tilt. And it's very clear to me that if I want it the way that I want it, I'm going to need to go back and do some post-production drop those highlights, and make sure that when I drop the highlights and I do the other editing, that it's not going to butcher the seam lines. As I'm looking around in here right now, I'm not seeing the seam lines. It did a great stitch, and once again, this was all done inside the Mavic 2 Pro. Fantastic. And you know, the other DJI products have ways to do it as well. I've got my Mavic 1, and yes, I can set up 360s with that one as well, but it doesn't do that automated stitching in the app for you there. So all right, we're going to close that one down. We're going to close the Affinity Photo down. And before I'm gone and running off, I meant to do this way earlier. So we're at the end of the stream here, but I wanted to let everyone know that officially today, this morning, before I started up this live stream, we have launched the newest class over at AZ-Drone at Teachable. So as I've mentioned before on channel, we're starting to move our classes over to Teachable. And this one was supposed to be out a couple months ago. Holiday seasons and everything else, there's all my excuses. I'm done with them. But we finally launched the Building Your Drone Business Bundle. So what that means is it's a series of courses. This is something I could never do on Udemy. Bundle the classes so that I can give more value to the students. You know, I've been wondering about the Mavic Air 2. You know, I've been eyeing it. So, and I've been wondering because I think that'd be a fun little camera just for when I'm going out, because I do fly for fun as well. And maybe I should show some more of that on the channel. But I've been wondering about that, Bruce. So you're bringing me closer to having to spend money again. Yes, I know. It's, yep. Jody had mentioned it too. She'd said something about a Christmas present, but you know, it's been a weird year. So there we go. All right. So the Building Your Drone Business Bundle, before I let you all go. And if you want to jump off now, I totally understand, because who needs a pitch? But in the meantime, so this is a combination of 7 of the classes that we have at Teachable. The brand new class that we have is Post Part 107, How Do You Start Building Your Drone Business? We're not going to tell you how to make $1 million in it, but the class series does point out some of the things that seem to be afterthoughts for all of us that we forget, and we don't realize the additional expenditures, needing photo editing software, needing 360 software, needing applications to do modeling. You know, there's a lot of additional things that go into the business. And I think a lot of people get sticker shock as they start out. They're like, well, I've got a drone and I've got the controller, and then they find out you need this, 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 and this. So in the first class, which is our Post Part 107 class, we talk about all that. And so I actually have an Excel sheet of everything that we do on the channels and on the classes. And so the new Post Part 107 class is 5 hours on its own. This entire series, where we go through all 7 of our courses, is 26.5 hours. And so let's talk about what we cover in it. It's the Post Part 107 class. It's the Drone Construction Progression class, because I really do enjoy doing construction progression. So that class will give you a lot of ideas beyond just drone construction progression. So I really do think it applies in more places than just that. We do the Litchi Waypoint Mission class. We do the Beginner's Ground Station Pro, Beginner's Guide to Map Pilot, 3D modeling for beginners, and then finally the other big one is our 2D and 3D modeling class with Metashape. So it's 7 courses altogether, and it is down in the show notes below. So if you look down in the show notes before the comments section, you will find the link to it. I put the link right after the show notes start. And then we also, you know, I take a read through everything. If you don't feel like you're a beginner with a lot of this stuff, these classes most likely won't be for you. If you feel very comfortable with, you know, your flight skills, the autonomous flight, doing modeling, and, you know, doing time-lapse flights and images, if you feel really comfortable with that, no reason to grab these up. And also, if you feel uncomfortable with certain topics, all of the individual classes are available as well. And as you know, being on this channel, we do have discount coupons for all of our subscribers here. So I meant to bring this up earlier in the thing, but I have fun doing the edits, so we did that first. All right, everybody, I hope you have an awesome weekend. We're going to be doing another live stream on Monday, and we'll be previewing some of the stuff that's coming up. Let me look back over. Yeah. Oh, and yeah, Michael. So that's the house that we're leaving. Um, and yes, a very nice location. Home rental prices are a little expensive in Prescott for sure. So, all right. Anyways, we'll be hopping off of this one now. Monday will be another live stream, and we're going to talk about moving stuff over, some of my ideas for the studio. So it's going to be a casual one, not with any editing or anything, just with previews of what's to come. Because we're going to be doing two different virtual tours for this home location, the new location, because I've got some other sample ideas that I don't want to use customer stuff for. So I'm going to use the places we're renting instead. All right. Hope you have an awesome weekend, and I hope this was fun. David, I will be getting in touch with you this week if you're still on channel. So look forward to an email. Maybe we can set up a Zoom call because I've got a bunch of questions for you starting the new year. All right, everybody else, have a great one, and we'll see you in just a couple of days.